move to question time. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Ayres. Minister, Mr Bowen has repeated on numerous occasions the promise that renewables are the cheapest form of energy. Yet, since Labor was elected, power prices have risen by nearly 40%. Minister, when will power bills come down under your net zero plan?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Ayres.
I do remember, Senator Patterson, your colleague Senator Canavan on these questions at the end of the dull, dark period of inaction that characterised the Morrison period of government, saying that electricity prices had gone up by 91% when you lot were in charge of the electricity system after Mr Taylor and Mr Morrison had legislated net zero targets. After Mr Morrison went to the COP in Glasgow and then wandered around and did a big holiday on taxpayers' expense, wandering around, doing a family history tour of southern England.
Thank you. Resume your seat, Senator Patterson.
President, I'm not sure if you're listening closely to the minister's answer, but it was way, way, way off on direct relevance. I
always listen carefully, Senator Patterson, and I will draw the minister back to your question. Minister Ayres.
What I was illustrating, of course, and I'll get to your to that little part of your question that brushed with the facts, in due course. But Mr Morrison's approach was to take climate negotiations as a holiday opportunity.
Minister Ayres, to the question.
This government is taking an entirely different approach, resolving the wreckage where 24 out of 28 coal-fired power stations announced their closure or brought their closure forward, and no action, not one new generator, not any substantial bit of infrastructure under us, Senator. Don't you worry.
Ayres,
we'll get there. We've got 28 seconds.
Ayres, please resume your seat, Senator Patterson.
President, the minister is helpfully signposting that he has no intention of addressing my question by saying he'll get there. I think it's fair indication he is not being directly relevant.
I am listening carefully. I have directed the minister to your question. I take him at face value that he's going to get there, but if he doesn't, I'll remind him of your question. Minister Ayres.
Renewables backed by storage and gas and hydro is the lowest possible source of electricity generation. We are battling against a decade of inaction and inertia and policy paralysis that characterises your show, which is getting worse, and power prices will always be lower under our orderly model than your disorderly show.
Thank you, Minister Ayres. Thank you, Minister Ayres. Senator Patterson, first supplementary.
Thanks, Minister. Australians have never had it any better, Minister. Mr Bowen said earlier this month, and I quote, with investment in the cheapest form of generation, renewables, we are modernising our grid while putting downward pressure on bills. Yet more than 330,000 Australian households are facing electricity bill debt, and in the first half of this year alone, 10,268 businesses went insolvent or appointed external administrators, a 53% increase year on year. Minister, what is your message to the more than 330,000 Australian households?
The time for asking the question has expired. Minister Ayres.
My message is that electricity prices, there are two scenarios moving forward from here. One is a rollout of an electricity modernisation program with the lowest possible cost. Well, you see, Senator Patterson, there's this thing called hard work, which you may not understand. There's this thing called national effort, which you may not understand. There's these sets of principles around national interest that obviously always escape you. This is a job that we have to do to recover the wreckage that was left after a decade of policy inertia. That's the truth. That's the truth. And we have work to do to recover the wreckage that you and your colleagues left. It damaged Australia's capacity, it damaged ordinary Australians, and it damaged heavy industry.
Thank you, Minister Ayres. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, Mr Bowen earlier this month celebrated a record amount of renewable energy generation in Australia. Considering we have a record amount of what Mr Bowen claims is the cheapest form of power, will you guarantee that the cheapest form of power will reduce household energy bills next year?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Ayres.
I think I said yesterday controversially that a question that I was asked was dishonest. The question that you just asked at best is willfully misdirected, a willful misunderstanding of the position. Of course, you only need to grapple with the economic and engineering realities of this to agree with the Australian Energy Market Commission, who say delaying the connection of renewable generation and transmission into the market would put upward pressure on residential energy costs. So what we know for certain is that under your disorderly transition scenario, that prices would be higher. Under our scenario, prices will be lower than they otherwise would.
You've concluded, Minister? You've concluded your answer? Yes? Thank you. Senator Marielle Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Gallagher. Today marks the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, a reminder that ending gender-based violence has been and continues to remain a national priority for the Albanese Labor government. Can the minister outline how the government is driving change, including through the National Plan to End Violence Against Women and Children, and what progress has been made so far?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Smith for the question and for the work that she's done in the last term and this term to support Australian women and make sure they get a better deal. Violence against women and children is never acceptable, and today the Minister for Social Services and the Assistant Ministers, Minister Carney and myself, have announced that we are providing an additional $41.8 million for 1800 Respect to make sure that everyone who seeks help can get it. We know, and as many senators in this place know, that 1800 Respect is a critical service supporting families experiencing domestic and family violence to have the trauma-informed and more easily accessible support that they need. This will include on-demand video, counselling and SMS capability so victim survivors can access support by the best medium that suits their needs. In addition to this, of course, this government has proudly and importantly made significant investments into ensuring that we are doing everything we can to end violence against women and children, including making the Leaving Violence program permanent, introducing legislation to make our social security system so it can't be weaponised by perpetrators of abuse. We've invested into emergency and transitional housing to ensure that women can reach safety when they need it, investing in legal services, including women's legal services, legislating 10 days paid domestic violence leave, launching an inquiry into domestic, family and sexual violence-related suicide, established the National Higher Education Code to prevent and respond to gender-based violence in universities, implemented all of the 55 Respect at Work recommendations and legislated a positive duty for employers to protect staff and customers from sexual harassment and abuse, and we know that there is more work to do.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Smith, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. This work is absolutely crucial and must continue. What steps is the government continuing to take to prevent violence and to hold perpetrators accountable as part of the National Plan?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Smith for that supplementary and for highlighting the need to continue to look at the best ways for action to be done under the National Plan. And there is a very significant conversation around holding perpetrators to account and also ensuring that we are investing in prevention. So investing in programs to support children and young people to heal, recover and break the cycle of violence, to deliver prevention and consent campaigns that people may have seen on TV or through social media, and holding perpetrators to account through funding programs that intervene earlier with men who want to change their behaviour, with taking action to deal with high-risk perpetrators, including investing to detect, monitor and intervene with repeat offenders, and introducing legislation again to make sure that our social security system can't be weaponised by perpetrators of abuse. There is more work to do on that, and I will work with Minister Plibersek on it.
Senator Smith, second supplementary.
Minister, today also marks the beginning of the United Nations Unite campaign and 16 days of activism, this year focused on digital abuse. How is the government addressing technology-facilitated abuse, including harmful apps and social media practices that enable image-based violence?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Smith for that question around technology-facilitated abuse, because this is one of the areas when you have a national plan that goes through a period of time, you have to continue to adjust your responses based on what you're seeing. And I'd like to shout out the work of the E-Safety Commissioner and those who work at the E-Safety Commission, who have done an extraordinary amount of work in this space and who often are the receivers or victims of abuse through the use of technology because of the work they are doing. It is very important work. More than half of Australian adults say they've been targeted by technology-facilitated abuse. Women and children, of course, are often, as we often see in so many areas, targeted through this kind of behaviour. We have been taking action to reduce access to Nudify apps and undetectable stalking apps. We'll work across government with our regulators and industries to make sure our efforts are measured, targeted and effective. And, of course, the social media ban or introducing a minimum age of 16 is an important part.
Senator Cadell.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Environment and Water, Senator Watt. Minister, we've had reports from farmers who couldn't track incoming storms to protect their sheep because the new BOM platform failed to load local weather observations, fishers who couldn't see wind or direction or decide sea state to go out and invest their time or whether it was safe, and our growers who are left to guess whether the weather was preparing for harvest. How does the Labor Party justify spending $96 million on a Bureau of Meteorology website that performs worse than free weather apps, especially when your government claims to care about food security, as you launch a free food security council while leaving the very people who produce that food at risk of an underperforming weather app?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thank you, Senator Cadell. I'm sure Senator Cadell has noticed the comments that I've made about the BOM's handling of its website change. I, along with, I'd say, most other Australians, were pretty unimpressed with the way the BOM handled that and met with I am the Minister, Senator Mackenzie, and that's why, as the Minister, I had a meeting at the time with the acting CEO of the BOM and explained that I didn't think their actions and management of this had met public expectations, and asked them to consider urgent changes, which they began making within a couple of days of that. They've also indicated that they will be making further changes to that website, which I think is the right thing to do. In terms of the cost of this website upgrade, the BOM's earlier statements to the effect that the cost had been around $4 million were one aspect of this program. They subsequently clarified that there was more to it than just the public-facing website, but I do think that they could have been more fulsome, shall we say, in what they'd have said at the time. And again, we've now had— You're right? The BOM.
Order.
They're an independent agency. We don't get in and tell the BOM what the climate is. So we should get in and tell the BOM what the climate is. Right. So ministers should decide what the weather is. Shall I hop on the BOM website and tell them what I reckon the website is?
That's what they did.
Honestly, you people.
That's why there's no
We respect we respect science. We
Order.
respect independent
Order.
government agencies, and thirdly, we respect the fact that those independent agencies have an obligation to spend taxpayers' money wisely, and that's exactly what I've said to the new CEO of the BOM when I've met with him twice in his first fortnight in the job.
Order, Senator Henderson.
I'll have a little bit more to say about this in your next question.
Senator Cadell, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Given those concerns and things you have raised here, Minister, will you commit today to commissioning an independent audit, preferably by ANAO, to investigate the procurement, delivery, testing and performance of this $96 million website, And if not, why is this government afraid of?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Watt.
Well, Senator Cadell, I can appreciate that you wouldn't be aware of this given you weren't a member of this chamber at the time. But you know which government actually commissioned this new website? It was the Turnbull government. It was the Turnbull government. So it was the Turnbull government that signed those contracts about that new website. I'm sorry to inform you. The work continued over a number of years, but this goes back to the Turnbull government, followed by the Morrison government. So what I've done, as soon as I became aware of the problems with this website, was met with the acting CEO and explained my displeasure and asked for urgent changes to be made, which occurred. I've met twice with the new CEO of the BOM, including on his very first day in the job, to outline my concerns and the need for him to get on top of them. And I have confidence that the new CEO of the BOM is taking these matters seriously and will properly investigate them.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cadell, second supplementary.
Whilst we would very much prefer an audit because this site has nothing to hide in this process, Minister, if the Bureau and the government can't even manage a rollout of a website, why should Australians trust the government's big systems reforms right across the food security network, energy and the environment?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Watt.
Well, I can tell you what Australian farmers don't need, and they don't need an alternative government that doesn't believe in climate change. They don't need an alternative government that says we don't need to do anything about emissions. We don't need it to do anything about emissions. We don't need to worry about the fact that droughts are more likely, that floods are more likely, that cyclones are more likely and impact on agriculture.
Minister Watt. Minister Watt, had you concluded, or are you sitting down? Senator Cadell.
Thank you. On direct relevance, this was solely about big system reforms and energy technology.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll draw the minister back to the government's response. Minister Watt.
So, look, returning to the matter at hand, as I've said a number of times now, not just here today but also in the media on several occasions over the last couple of weeks, I'm not happy about how the BOM has handled this matter. We do have a new CEO in place who brings a very strong record in managing large, complex, science-based organisations. I've got confidence that he will, as I've requested, get to the bottom of what has happened here to ensure that taxpayers' money is spent wisely, whether it be by this government or by former Turnbull government ministers when they signed off on these contracts in the first place.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters.
Mr President, my question is to the Minister for Women, Senator Gallagher. 43 women have been killed by family and domestic violence this year alone. We continue to be in an epidemic of violence against women. We know that violence against women cuts across all backgrounds and disproportionately affects First Nations women and women with disabilities. Today is the day for the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and the start of the UN Women's 16 Days of Activism. We welcome the government's announcement of additional funding for 1800-RESPECT, which has experienced a 3,000% rise in calls. But as demand continues to grow, it's simply not enough, and it's frontline services that need more funding too. Women are still turned away when they seek help, and underfunding of specialist sexual assault services means that when 1800-RESPECT refers callers to them, they can't provide support. When will the government increase funding to frontline family and domestic support services, to specialist sexual violence services and to comprehensive prevention work across the community?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. And I thank Senator Waters for the question and also for the role she plays in women's policy space more generally, but also particularly in the area of women's safety. And I would say to Senator Waters, we are coming at this issue of how to end violence against women and children from every single available lever across government. And yes, it is about frontline services, and we have invested heavily in that space, over $4 billion in ending gender-based violence and ending gender-based violence programs, including support for frontline services. And in addition to that, $3.9 billion into legal services, including women's legal services and Aboriginal legal services, to make sure that they're on solid and sustainable footing and funding into the future. We are also coming at this from housing policy, from sharing and valuing care policy, so how we deliver that, from driving women's economic equality, so ensuring women's wages are not suppressed, that they are getting paid properly for the work they're doing, that they have skills and training opportunities on par with men, our women's health package to make sure that women aren't paying out of pocket and are actually being able to access services in the health system in ways that they haven't been able to before. And of course there's also the work that we're trying to do around ensuring women's leadership and representation and diversity across the government in all of the levers available to us, because we know that in driving gender equality we have to come at this, which is at the heart of violence against women and children. We have to come at this from every possible angle, and that is exactly what we are doing.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. The Domestic, Family and Sexual Violence Commissioner has recently recommended a national funding mapping framework to track unmet need in the family and domestic violence service provision sector and to identify funding priorities. When will that framework be developed? And why has it taken so long for the government to establish a clear picture of unmet need in this sector?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, I don't accept that assertion at the end, and I would say since coming to government, since 2022, we have put women's policy and driving gender equality, which, as I said, is at the heart of women's safety and ensuring women's safety, at the centre of the government. Like, it is at the centre of everything we think about. And in relation to the Domestic and Family Violence Commissioner, she is speaking with in fact, we're having the Women's Ministerial meeting on Friday, because it is essential, and I agree with Senator Waters, that we need to ensure mapping, that where we are providing investments both across the Commonwealth, states and territories, that we are doing so in a strategic and coordinated way. The Commissioner will speak, I think, with women's ministers on Friday. That work continues. And ensuring that we are getting, of the investments that are being made, that we are getting the most out of those opportunities is essential. But as I said, we can't see it in isolation of everything else we're doing across government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. We know that a key barrier to women and children leaving violent households is that they have nowhere to go and they have no financial security. When will the government raise the rate and tackle the housing crisis to ensure that women don't have to choose between violence and homelessness?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, we have increased Commonwealth rent assistance since May by 45%. We've put $1 billion to crisis and transitional accommodation for women and children fleeing domestic violence, and in addition to that, invested heavily in the new National Agreement on Social Housing and Homelessness, which of course supports women and children, in addition to a lot of the other programs we've done. And in fact, last week I saw Senator McAllister opening 12 units for women leaving violence or older women, many of whom, Senator McAllister tells me, had lived in temporary accommodation for 5 years, a former old aged care facility, and have now in more appropriate accommodation based on the policies of this government. And there is more to do, Senator Waters. I always acknowledge that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walker.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Education, Senator Walsh. The Albanese Labor government went to the election promising to support students at our universities and TAFEs by cutting their HECS debt by 20%. How is the government progressing in its delivery of this commitment, and what other measures is the government delivering to help young Australians with cost of living relief? How will cutting student HECS debts by 20% support young Australians with the cost of living relief and help set them up for life?
Thank you, Senator Walker. Minister Walsh.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Walker, for your question. It's wonderful to have such a strong advocate for young Australians and cutting student debt on the Albanese Labor government team. A year ago, the Prime Minister of Australia promised that a re-elected Albanese Labor government would wipe 20% off HECS debt. Australians voted for it, and we are delivering it. Last weekend, people started receiving emails and text messages saying their HECS debt had been wiped. And in just 2 days' time, 1.5 million Australians will have their HECS debt cut too. Next week, the same thing will happen for a further 1.5 million Australians. They too will get that text message. They'll get that email. That's 3 million Australians getting the HECS relief that they deserve, the HECS relief that we promised, the HECS relief that this government is delivering. $5,500 debt wiped from the average student's debt, gone, and put back into the pockets of Australians just as they're getting started in life, just when they need that relief the most. 3 million Australians are benefiting from our commitment. 3 million Australians are getting this cost of living relief. 3 million Australians getting a weight off their shoulders just before Christmas. These are the kinds of reforms that only a Labor government will ever deliver. From these cuts to student debt to our historic investments in Medicare, only Labor delivers the reforms and the relief that young Australians and all Australians deserve.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Walker, first supplementary.
We know the Albanese Labor government's reforms to HECS have been huge for young people, helping to take the pressure off, put more money back in the pockets of millions of Australians and to make our education system fairer. What else is the government doing to support young people in education, and has this received widespread support?
Thank you, Senator Walker. Minister Walsh.
Thank you, President. Well, we know that young Australians support our student debt cuts. We know that they support free TAFE as well. And we know that young Australians embrace the opportunity to get an education and get ahead. But, Senator Walker, do you know who doesn't support our cuts to student debt? Do you know who doesn't support our free TAFE program? It's the Coalition over there. I think some of them might be checking their phones right now just to see whether they have got that text message, though, or that email cutting their own student debt. But they don't support our program to cut student debt. While millions of Australians benefit, they still oppose our student debt cuts. They still oppose free TAFE, with the Leader of the Opposition saying if you don't pay for it, you don't value it. I'll tell you what we value on this side of the chamber. We value the opportunity for an education, and we value the opportunity to do exactly what we said we were going to do.
Has expired. Senator Walker, second supplementary.
The cut to HECS debt will support young people by delivering cost of living relief when they are starting out in life. Along with HECS relief, what else is the Albanese Labor government doing to deliver for young Australians and help them get ahead? Are there any obstacles standing in the way?
Thank you, Senator Walker. Minister Walsh.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Walker. Well, we know that young people starting out in life deserve cost of living relief. And we are delivering while those opposite are divided. While we're looking after the future of young Australians, they're caught up in the conflicts of the past. On this side of the chamber, we see young Australians. We back young Australians. We support young Australians. With our 20% HECS cut, with fee-free TAFE and with paid prac too. And while we know that the Liberals love lower wages and higher taxes, Senator Henderson, we are supporting young Australians with higher wages and lower taxes, because we want young Australians to earn more and keep more of what they earn. While you wanted to abolish free TAFE, Senator Henderson, you wanted to abolish it.
Senator Henderson.
And, President, we want more young Australians getting an education, walking through those doors of opportunity and getting ahead.
Expired. Senator David Pocock.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Ageing, Senator McAllister. Minister, the ACT has a dire shortage of GPs. We have fewer GPs per capita than even some outer regional areas in Australia. We constantly have the lowest bulk billing rate in the country, by a long margin. And the ACT government projects it will need at least 33 additional graduate doctors to staff our hospitals by 2041. Given all this, why is it that the ANU has missed out on being allocated additional Commonwealth-supported places for the ACT's only medical school?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much for your question, Senator Pocock. I think you will know from previous discussions in this place that the government understands the significance of the challenge that we face in the ACT in ensuring that ACT residents have access to health care. We do recognise that the bulk billing rate in the ACT is significantly lower than in other parts of the country, and it's why we are making the arrangements that we are to expand bulk billing availability in the ACT. So you will know, I think, that an expression of interest is open to establish 3 new bulk bill GP clinics for Canberra to deliver more doctors and more bulk billing practices to Canberra. We are, of course, very focused on workforce, and the government has made significant investments to generate not just more GPs but more nurses, more personnel able to support the health needs of Australians. We continue to work across the country to ensure that we have the personnel who are available to support Australians when they need it.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. I'm still not sure why the ACT didn't get some Commonwealth-supported places. If you look at Tasmania, another small jurisdiction that also really struggles when it comes to GP shortages and bulk billing, rather than make UTAS apply for a greater share of Commonwealth-supported places for the medical school, Labor simply made an election commitment of 20 additional Commonwealth-supported places at UTAS. Why will the government give Tasmania more Commonwealth-supported places in medicine but not the ACT?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. And I do have some Tasmanian colleagues suggesting that we should perhaps not see it as a competition between places. But of course we acknowledge that it is important to raise availability and access to healthcare right across the country. It's why we are making the largest ever investment in Medicare, because we recognise that under the previous government, bulk billing was in freefall, people's access to Medicare was compromised by the cuts that were made by that government, by their determination to remove resources from our health system. We back public health care. We back the health needs of Australians. And I tell you what, Australians know who is on their side when it comes to health. We will continue to invest in Medicare and continue to expand access to Medicare for all Australians.
Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. Well, Canberrans are asking whether the government's on our side. I welcome the additional CSPs in the medical school in Tasmania. They desperately need it, as do we here in Canberra. And yet when you allocate 100 additional ones on top of your 20 to Tasmania as an election commitment, the place with the lowest GP to population ratio, the place with the lowest bulk billing rate, misses out. Please can you explain to Canberrans why we've missed out?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, I can inform the Senator that this was a highly competitive and robust process, and it is the case, Senator, that not all applications could receive Commonwealth-supported places and funding. The selection was based on recommendations from a selection advisory committee. This had representatives from the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing, the Department of Education, the Australian College of Rural and Remote Medicine and the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. A further 50 commencing medical CSPs will be allocated through a second grant round, which will open in 2026. And I would say to the Senator more generally that we are determined to repair the damage that was done in the period when those opposite governed. We saw a significant deterioration in the overall capacity of the health system, and we are determined to repair it.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure. Under the Albanese Labor government, Australia's immigration system is out of control. Infrastructure Australia's 2025 Infrastructure Market Capacity Report shows there is a shortage of around 140,000 skilled workers across Australia, and this is expected to explode to a 300,000 worker shortfall by 2027. The Albanese Labor government's imported roughly 1.2 million extra migrants since 2022, and now the CEO of Infrastructure Australia admitted in an ABC interview that a solution to the skills shortage, their solution, is to bring in even more migrants to plug the gap, instead of treating this as a 300,000 people opportunity to create a better homegrown skilled workforce. Why won't the Albanese government admit Labor would rather import a workforce rather than invest in a better future for our kids, the unemployed and our tradies?
Thank you, Senator Bell. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. And I thank the senator for his question. There's quite a lot in it that he's covered. In fact, if you'd listened to previous responses that I've made in the Senate on employment, Senator, you would know that we are trying to grow our own, especially in our remote regions with First Nations people. In fact, we've tried to roll out at least 3,000 jobs across remote Australia. We are looking at 3,000 rangers, at 1,000 of them for women. So when we talk about growing our own in terms of employment across the place, across Australia, we are certainly doing it. In terms of your premise around migration to Australia, well, we're very proud to have people call this place home, along with our oldest culture in the country, in the world. So we are very proud to welcome visitors from overseas who call this place home. But I will say this too, President, that each time our government moves to try and improve the workforce across Australia, not just with building the Australian economy and local people in this country and those who call it home, we also need to build houses. But when we have the other side opposing the opportunity to do that, especially One Nation, who oppose everything that we're trying to do to develop and grow this country, then I would say to the senator, more than happy to provide those details to you about how, on this side of the parliament, we welcome all people who call Australia home and are doing our best to ensure that there is employment and doing our best to ensure there is growth.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell, first supplementary.
Minister, another 300,000 migrants cannot fix a crisis made worse by the 1.2 million you have already brought in, and which turbocharged the demand for housing, roads, hospitals and schools. Minister, this is madness. Why is the Albanese Labor government trying to fix a housing and infrastructure crisis created by mass immigration with even more mass immigration?
Thank you, Senator Bell. Minister McCarthy.
President, do you know what is madness? What is madness is that One Nation, the coalition, continue to oppose the building of this great country through the development of infrastructure and through the development of housing. We constantly bring to this Senate the ability to do that, and you guys opposite sit there, smirk and say no.
Yeah.
And then you want to blame everyone but yourselves in why we are having challenges in trying to move forward. And blaming migration, there is a deeper theme going on here, President, and I won't have a bar of it. So the madness is not on this side. We know where it's coming from.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bell, second supplementary.
Minister, Infrastructure Australia's Net Zero Workforce Report says around 130,000 skilled workers are tied up in net zero infrastructure projects. Will you admit that Labor's ideological rush to net zero is not only driving up power bills but also hoovering up the very tradies and specialists we need for housing and infrastructure? And will you back One Nation's policy of ending the net zero madness so those workers can be redirected to fixing our housing and infrastructure crises?
Thank you, Senator Bell. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Thank you. I so welcome this question on net zero, President. I really welcome this question. I have just come to the Senate from a population of over 100,000 in the north who've had to deal with a tropical cyclone way early in the piece, at speeds that are phenomenal for this time of year for us. We know, unlike the deniers opposite, we know—
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Canavan, I have Senator Bell on his feet, but you are busy interjecting. Senator Bell.
Is the minister suggesting that the
Senator
net zero
Bell,
policy is
your
related
point
to
of
the
order?
cyclone?
Senator Bell, your question went to net zero. The minister's being directly relevant. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. I can see that the senators are very interested in net zero. But let me tell you this: unlike the other side, we do see that there are issues impacting the climate. We do know, along with countries around the world, that we have to act. So on this side of the Senate, we will be responsible, we will be sensible, we will try. You laugh. You laugh. Senator Canavan, I'll pick you up on that. No, you're a joke.
Thank you,
You're
Minister.
a joke, Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Minister. The time for responding has expired. Minister, thank you. Senator Canavan, I've had to call you a number of times today, not just at question time. Tonight is open-ended adjournment. I look forward to seeing your name there to put in all of the comments you've been interjecting with for the day. Senator Cox.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Emergency Management, Senator McAllister. Over the weekend, we saw Tropical Cyclone Fina impact communities across the Northern Territory, and last night it made landfall in the Kimberley, my home state of Western Australia. I know the Minister for Emergency Management, Minister McBain, was in Darwin yesterday meeting with the NT Government. Can the Minister update the Senate on the current situation and how the Commonwealth is supporting our communities?
Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Cox. Well, over the weekend we have seen incredible efforts by first responders who have helped communities across the Northern Territory who were impacted by Tropical Cyclone Fina. I want to thank the Territorians who played their role, heeding the advice from relevant agencies, keeping themselves and their communities safe. Our government wants to be good partners to the Northern Territory Government and will work hand in hand with them to ensure Territorians do have the support that they need to recover. We have staff from the National Emergency Management Agency embedded in the Emergency Operations Centre to ensure that the Australian Government can consider any requests for assistance as soon as possible. You're right, Senator Cox, that Emergency Management Minister Kristy McBain was on the ground up in the Territory yesterday to speak with communities and offer assistance to the NT Government. And she also joined the member for Lingiari, Marion Scrimshaw, and Senator McCarthy in the Tiwi Islands and took the opportunity to deliver food to communities there as well. I know that members and senators across both chambers have worked hard to support their communities and to keep them updated. While Tropical Cyclone Fina is weakening, the situation remains dynamic. And Senator Cox, as your question indicated, Tropical Cyclone Fina crossed the Kimberley coast, and it does remain important for communities, particularly in Western Australia, to heed emergency advice as this tropical cyclone finishes its track. Our government will continue to monitor the situation and, of course, we stand ready to consider any requests for assistance that may be made by the Western Australian Government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cox, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. I know the Albanese Labor Government is working closely with the NT Government and yesterday activated the disaster relief funding to support communities as they begin to recover from Tropical Cyclone Fina. What support is available to those affected communities?
Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, many Territorians will have had a difficult few days, and they are now facing the very big task of cleaning up their homes and cleaning up their communities. Our first priority is helping people get the assistance that they need to recover and to rebuild. It's why we've worked closely with the Northern Territory Government to activate financial assistance for impacted communities. Territorians who have had to relocate to evacuation centres or leave their communities due to the impacts of Tropical Cyclone Fina are eligible for immediate relief payments to help them get back on their feet. We've also activated joint funding to help councils and the Territory Government rebuild damaged roads and public infrastructure to a more resilient standard. We know recovery will be an ongoing process. We will continue working with the Territory Government and the community to understand what's needed and to provide the necessary support.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cox, second supplement.
Thank you, President. We know as the climate changes, we can expect increasingly severe and frequent disasters. How is the Albanese Labor government investing in Commonwealth's emergency management capabilities to better prepare for and protect our communities from disasters?
Minister McAllister.
Well, on this side of the chamber, we know that the climate is changing and we need to prepare communities for more severe and more frequent disasters. And it is why our government has made record investments in the Commonwealth's emergency management capability so we can better prepare and better protect communities. We've invested in the National Emergency Stockpile. That includes resources like emergency housing and generators. These were ready to be deployed to the Northern Territory had the Northern Territory Government requested them. We're also investing in risk reduction through the Disaster Ready Fund to better prepare communities for future disasters. And just this month, Minister McBain announced another $200 million to support 96 projects across Australia to help make communities more resilient. We will work with communities, with our Territory partners
thank you,
to
Minister.
prepare communities for
Senator
these.
Pocock, I'm really sorry I missed your name the second time, but please go ahead.
No stress at all. Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Minister, I was hugely supportive of Labor's defence of the Australian Public Service at the last election and your move to end outsourcing and the over-reliance on consultants. I'm concerned by reports today of a new austerity measure and would like to understand how many total jobs will be lost from the APS as a result of your move to require federal departments and agencies to cut 5% of their annual budget in a single year. How many of these job losses will be in Canberra?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Pocock for the question. And the idea that we have asked agencies or are imposing a 5% cut on agencies is incorrect. As I said in a radio interview this morning, what we have asked agencies to do is think about all the things they're doing, all the programs they administer, and to consider whether they are still priorities, because we need to ensure that we've got resources available to meet all of the pressures that are coming the way of the public service. I mean, in a sense, I get criticised from those opposite on the issue of fiscal discipline. This is fiscal discipline. You have rules around how you consider new funding, what's existing funding, what the new priorities are, what the pressures are, and our job is to try and consider that across the board and work out how to make all of the necessary investments. So this exercise has been around ensuring agencies are constantly thinking about what they do. Since we came to government, we've found about $100 billion worth of savings and reprioritisations across government, and by finding that, we've been able to invest in the areas that are priorities for this government and meet some of those pressures, and this is a continuation of that approach. We are not looking to reduce ASL. As part of that, we have been very clear that we thought the public service was in terrible shape when we came to government. It had been hollowed out, it had been contracted out. We have turned that around in the first term by employing permanent public service jobs and reducing the use of consultants and contractors, and we will continue with that approach, but we will also bring fiscal discipline to the budget process.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
President, thank you, Minister. Noting your advice that you will not reduce ASL, can I ask how this austerity measure will make it harder for the National Gallery to, say, plug its leaky roof, or for the CSIRO to handle the job cuts, which we now know are more than were lost under the Abbott government?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Gallagher.
Well, as Senator Pocock would know, that we've taken decisions about exempting the national institutions from efficiency dividends, at the additional efficiency dividend that was imposed. We have been very sensitive to the collecting institutions and their relatively modest budgets, and we've also invested a huge amount of investment into the national institutions, including the National Gallery. Now, I've been working with the National Gallery for over a year on dealing with their issues of their roof, as have other ministers in this place. I think you've seen from our record, which is actually ensuring that we are protecting the budgets of the national institutions here, investing in them to make sure they continue to do what they do, and in relation to the National Gallery, working with the gallery about the best way and timing to make the investments needed to ensure that that building is safe and safe for the art that it holds, and will continue to do so.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you very much, Minister, for that. Minister, please can you table the letter, a copy of the correspondence from the Department of Finance to department and agency heads, so we can have transparency over the exact nature of the government's ask and who this reduction of 5% applies to?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Gallagher.
I'm sure this is something we can continue in estimates next week. I'm not certain. I'm happy to go back and have a look at the correspondence. It's not the Departments of Finance's decision. It's a decision of the government. We took that as part of our budget process. We just think it's good practice. It's not an austerity measure. You can go out and say that in the media as much as you like. This is about fiscal discipline and making sure that when we make investments in the public service, that they are using those investments for the highest possible need, the priorities and the pressures that we are trying to manage now. It isn't a case that we can continue investing layer upon layer upon layer. That is not the world that I operate in. I have to manage this not just in Canberra but across the board. And this is simply saying to agencies, look, if you're coming to us for extra money, we want to be convinced that you've been thinking about how you use your current money.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, President. My question is to the Minister for Trade, Senator Farrell. I refer to the government's decision to sign the Belém Declaration on the transition away from fossil fuels, which is an agreement to end Australia's second, being coal, and third, being gas, largest exports. Did the Minister for Energy and Climate consult you before signing this agreement? If so, when did you first learn of the details of the Belém Declaration?
Thank you, Senator Henderson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Henderson. And I'd like to thank you personally for coming to the Sydney Institute last week to listen to my speech on trade. It was great to see you, and you might want to tell your colleagues the offer I made very publicly at that meeting. Senator Henderson, in our government, we're an action government. This government, and you've seen that. You've seen that in everything we've done. Certainly in my space, the trade space, the tourism space, the SMOS. But
Senator Henderson.
But there is something unique about our Prime Minister in that, something unique about him in that he has trust in his ministers. And so if he appoints you to be a minister, then he gives you the responsibility of looking after that.
Order. 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 Senator Henderson.
A point of order, Madam President, on direct relevance. I was seeking information whether the Minister for Energy and Climate consulted Minister Farrell before signing this agreement, and when you first learned about this.
I will draw the Minister to your question, Senator Henderson. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. As I was saying, this Prime Minister gives his ministers the responsibility, and in the case of the issues that were raised at the COP, they were issues in the purview of Minister Bowen. And so I don't tell him how to run his portfolio. He certainly doesn't tell me how to run mine. I have noticed the criticism of of Minister Bowen by the opposition. We have completely rejected that criticism of Minister Bowen. He's doing a fantastic job in this space. Just to give you one example of that is the battery scheme.
Minister, you've concluded. First supplementary, Senator Henderson.
Thanks, Madam President. It is common practice for the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade to commission economic modelling before signing agreements which affect Australian trade. Has the government conducted economic modelling on the impact of signing an agreement which ends Australia's second and third largest exports?
Thank you, Senator Henderson. Minister Farrell.
Well, I reject your thank you, President, and thank Senator Henderson for her first supplementary question. Look, I reject your categorisation of what that decision means. Until very recently, Senator Henderson, you were part of an opposition and then previous to that a government that firstly signed the Paris Agreement and secondly—
Minister? Sorry, Senator Henderson.
President, a point of order on direct relevance. I asked about whether the government has conducted economic modelling on the impact of signing this agreement.
The Minister is being relevant to your question. Thank you, Senator Henderson. Minister Farrell.
You were part of a government and an opposition that supported the move to net zero. Now, by 2050, we're not going to get to net zero without the continued use, for instance, of gas. We simply can't switch off gas and turn on renewables. That's just not the way the world works. And this government and the Prime Minister himself has—
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Henderson, second supplementary.
Given the government wishes to end Australia's second and third largest exports, which made $150 billion a year for Australia last financial year, what does the government propose we replace them with?
Thank you, Senator Henderson. Minister Farrell.
Well, again, thank you, President. Thank Senator Henderson for her second supplementary question. I don't think you listened to my previous answer, Senator Henderson, because this government sees an absolute imperative for the continued use of gas, not only in this country, but to export, for instance, to our friends in Japan. The first 7 hours of energy every single day in Tokyo come from gas supplied by Australia. We are going to continue to honour our contractual obligations, and we're going to continue to use gas as that transition fuel so that what used to be your objective, namely net zero by 2050, is in fact achieved by this government, under this government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ananda Raja.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Health and Ageing, Senator McAllister. This year, delivering cost of living relief and affordable healthcare has been a key priority of the Albanese Labor government. How has the government strengthened Medicare and delivered on its commitments to deliver better access to healthcare for all Australians?
Thank you, Senator Ananda Raja. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Ananda Raja, and I commend you for your ongoing interest in the healthcare of Australians. Well, this year the Australian people voted for a government that would stand up for them and would stand up for Medicare. And that's what they got. They got it with the Albanese Labor government, and we are making the largest ever investment in the history of Medicare, an $8.5 billion investment. And that started to kick in just a few weeks ago. Now, this will create a new incentive payment for practices that bulk bill every patient and expand bulk billing across Australia. It will triple the number of bulk billing practices and mean that 9 out of 10 GP visits will be bulk billed by 2030. That is what our year of delivering for Australians looks like. We think that approximately 75% of general practices would be financially better off if they moved to fully bulk billing, and we know that more than 1,000 practices have already indicated that they will stop charging a gap fee and move to being a fully bulk billed service. Because the only card that you should need when you go to the doctor should be your Medicare card, and that is what our expansion of bulk billing is delivering. It's what it is delivering, and it is a rebuild of bulk billing after a decade of coalition neglect. It is a stark contrast to the record of those opposite. Bulk billing rates were in free fall under the coalition's 6-year freeze of the Medicare rebate, which ripped billions out of Medicare. And you compare it with our first term, when we delivered $3.5 billion in 2023, which restored access to bulk billing to the 11 million patients that it covered. This year, we are delivering for all Australians with the largest ever investment in Medicare, and it will provide real cost-of-living assistance to families right across the country.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Nandaraja, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. In its first term, the Albanese Labor government delivered 87 Medicare urgent care clinics, so Australians could get the urgent treatment they need. How has the government continued to roll out urgent care clinics across Australia, and how is this improving access to healthcare across Australia?
Thank you, Senator Nandaraja. Minister McAllister.
Well, you're right, Senator. We are expanding the availability of free urgent health care by opening another 47 Medicare urgent care clinics. That's 14 new clinics in New South Wales, 9 in Victoria, Senator, 10 in Queensland, 6 in Western Australia, 3 in South Australia, 3 in Tasmania, 1 in the Northern Territory and 1 in the ACT. And these services are a game-changer for families right across the country. Australians have made more than 2 million visits to Labor's free Medicare urgent care clinics. 1/3 of patients are under the age of 15. Nearly half of the patients who attended a Medicare urgent care clinic would have used a hospital emergency department if no clinic had been available. And 30% of visits to Medicare urgent care clinics have taken place on weekends, and 25% of patients have attended after 5 p.m. on a weekday. These clinics are filling a gap.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Nandaraja, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. The Albanese Labor government delivered cost-of-living relief to all Australians by strengthening Medicare and cutting the cost of medicines on the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme in its first term. What further action has the government taken in 2025 to help more Australians access cheaper medicines via the PBS?
Thank you, Senator Nandaraja. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, our government is slashing the cost of medicines. We delivered for Australians everywhere when we passed that cheaper medicines bill. And from next year, you'll pay no more than $25 when you're filling your prescription on the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme. That is a 20% cut. A 20% cut, colleagues, to the maximum cost of medicines under the PBS, and it means that Australians will save more than $200 million a year. We want the PBS to be the very best that it can be, offering more Australians effective and affordable treatments. On October the 1st, Australians affected by breast cancer, rare kidney disease and a range of other conditions received access to even cheaper medicines on the PBS. And for the first time in 30 years, unbelievably, we listed new contraceptive pills on the PBS. And these listings are life-changing, because instead of paying thousands of dollars, Australians will have cheaper access to the medicines that they need.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Wong.
And with that, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Thank you.